Hey, gang. All right, with the Paladin concept probably dropping, I'd say probably tomorrow, or maybe now, depending on when you're watching this, or a couple days ago, depending on when you're watching this. And the big everything is on sale days are coming up this weekend. I mean, you didn't buy anything day of, did you? Well, let's get into some things to consider before the big day comes, that all sale day. Let's get this. As I'm pulling up Pariah here, planning ahead for a 4.0 in-game series with members of the Carnies, it brings up a couple things I like to remind myself of every IAE, and I thought I'd share them with you, particularly when it comes to FOMO and big ships. So let's get into it. First, outside the ships that are only sold around this time of the year, think like the Idris, the Javelin, the Kraken, the Pioneer, basically all the ones that the black market bots snap up in 5 to 10 seconds so they can resell them for huge markup. And why does CIG still sell them this way? But I'm not bitter. Anyways, where was I? Right, new concepts. So some people are a little disappointed that the Mirai Guardian and the Mist Fortune didn't make an appearance on Mist Day. But the fact that both were teased, and at least the Guardian looks like it's basically done, suggests they'll probably be dropping sooner than later. Like, maybe by the end of this year. But as far as concepts available in this IAE, it looks like CIG is going to go with the standard two, a starter and a big, which is pretty par for the course for them year after year. The starter is the Crusader Intrepid, which they upgunned, but still pretty undergunned if we're being honest. Thankfully, it feels a lot more like a solo smuggler ship, so if you're fighting people in it, you're probably doing it wrong anyways. For the Intrepid, while this ship is a starter, it's kind of a specialized starter, or at least it feels that way, and it doesn't quite have the generalist attitude of, say, the Avenger Titan. But even as a cargo runner, you're probably better off going with the Titan or the Nomad. Still, this little ship is growing on me, but don't buy the skins. Never buy the skins. They're a total waste of money. Anyways, here's the Intrepid with the Oblivion skin. Moving on. So first off, I'm busting out this script Tuesday morning, so there really hasn't been any leaks as of right now, just a couple blurry pictures. So if you pop into the comments to talk about how I didn't know about X or Y or was way off about Z, well, you make me sad. I might cry. So don't do that. Anyways, where was I? Right, the Paladin. Not a whole lot to say here. Just that if CIG sticks to their, well, guns, this ship will probably be a Corvette-sized thing rather than a Valkyrie variant I've heard some toss around. Could totally be wrong on that, though, since the Valkyrie itself was a concept at, I think it was SickCon, yeah. Pretty sure it was second. Anyways, I expect it to be in the mix with the Hammerhead and the Perseus, and kind of slap dab in the middle of those two in capabilities. More armor than the Hammerhead, but less guns. More guns and less armor than the Perseus. I said this on the Info Runners a couple days back, link in the up above parts, but I feel the Paladin will probably punch sideways compared to the Hammerhead, which punches down, and the Perseus, which hammers or punches up. It'll be a compromise between those two, not specifically better, probably rocking, just guessing from the very blurry images we saw, 6 size 5s or 6s, but it'll be more of a generalist. It'll be better at dealing with fighters than the Perseus, but better at dealing with the bigs than the Hammerhead, and less effective at those two than they are in their specialist roles. That's my guess anyways. Price-wise, I don't know, probably around 700, a hair more than the Perseus, a hair less than the Hammerhead. That would make sense to me. I'll just throw in a quick quip here that I kind of share with the Info Runners is with fighters, don't buy fighters, earn down, don't buy the skins, and alien ships are overpriced by design. Anyway, here's the Sentoki with a really awesome skin on it. So now some general advice, like the Info Runners, I pretty much agree with Al and X and Paul that generally you get a lot more bang for your buck buying a larger ship and then earning down. The thought goes like this: a larger ship will have more capabilities and more abilities to earn money in game. With that money, you can then buy the smaller ship you originally wanted to buy with real money. By the same token, it will take you quite a bit longer to earn up to the bigger ship with the smaller ship. So all things being equal, if you have the choice, go for the bigger ship with the more capabilities. So with that said, that is a good general piece of advice, but there are a couple caveats that I think kind of get lost in the sauce. So let's go into what those are. I'd say before you buy anything, particularly the bigger ships, really decide what you want to do with that ship in the game. For example, if you don't like mining and you want to be a dogfighter, why are you jonesing over an Orion or possibly a Pioneer? Of course, there's no reason to lock yourself down either, but for the really, really big ships, have an idea of what you'll do with it. Granted, an 890 Jump is a really cool looking ship with a fun idea behind it, but what will you do with it? Do you really plan on throwing big parties on it constantly? That's going to be your gameplay in the game, is just throwing big parties on a ship. Who will show up? Will you kit it out with NPCs? How will you pay for them? And we'll circle back to that in just a second. If you're going to pop around the verse solo, there's much better ships in the game for that. Now, if you're in a big org and you're in charge of supplying the flagship, well, okay, fine. That's a different story. The fact is, you might just want it, and that's fine. I mean, I'm hardly one to judge you, obviously, but have a plan. Have an idea of how you'll use that ship. These days, most of the ships are available in-game too. Do you realistically have the other ships to earn that ship in-game? Just before you pull the trigger on having to buy that ship right now before the sale ends, just take a breath and think of how exactly you're going to eventually use that ship in-game. But yeah, on that token, for some of us, these ships are a lot like Pokemon or any hobby, really. It's more about the collection than what they do. And if this is your hobby money, hey, I'm not judging. This is probably the one most people overlook, particularly when it comes to big ships. They see themselves or their character standing on the bridge of, say, an Idris, a Javelin, a Polaris, people running around, following orders, shooting all those guns on all those turrets, winning the day. What people don't think of, typically until much later, is where those people running around on their ship are going to come from. Even in large orgs, most of the people in the game right now have their own ideas of what they want to do in the verse. And most of them have that same dream of standing on the bridge, issuing those orders. Very few people playing this game have the dream of being janitor number 4, making sure there's no bottles left on the floor of the mess hall, you dig? And yeah, I can hear the fingers rushing the keyboards right now, but what about AI blades and NPCs? So this next part is speculation on my part because CIG hasn't really gone into a lot of details on these subjects, but I know a bit about game balance and what CIG has hinted at in the past. So here's my thoughts on how these things will roll out. Okay, for those who don't know, CIG has been talking about AI blades for years. These will be in-game accessories that you can add to your ship's computer that will allow it to automate some task. A single task per blade. Most people immediately jump to turrets because that was, I think, the first example CIG gave back in the day. And that's honestly not a bad use for them, but CIG has also mentioned several times that there will be other extremely useful things that AI blades will be able to do, but they'll be specialized. So if you use one to control the turrets, that means that you don't have one that say, scans or auto navigates around hazards or gets you through the jump point or does trades for you. You get the idea. These things will be extremely useful, and using them just as a turret that you don't want to have a crew for is certainly one use, but it's not the only use. What's more, I think AI blades will be a bit limited. CR has said that he doesn't want anything in the game to be a better option than putting a human, an actual person out in the world, in a seat. And from that perspective, I mean, this is still a game and CIG has to sell copies. They're not selling copies to AI blades, so that tracks. But beyond that, AI blades will probably be limited by a few things. First, a computer will probably have a limited number of slots, so don't expect to be soloing a hammerhead with them, for example. You might be able to get 2 or 3 turrets under a blade. Second, their competency will probably be limited by their class, with the better ones being extremely expensive. And combat ones will be even more expensive still. So again, a turret control will be a very expensive component. Finally, their components, so they'll be subject to wear and tear. They'll break down over time and become less reliable unless they're properly maintained. For NPCs, I suspect they'll generally be better than blades, but they'll also be burdened with an ongoing upkeep cost. You have to feed them and pay them and make sure your ship has some creature comforts. Beyond that, like the class of the AI blades, if you want the best NPCs out there, you're going to have to pay for that privilege. Along with the upkeep of the ship itself, you better be pulling in enough space bucks to make that worth your while. So those big ships are sexy, but really think of how hard they'll be to effectively crew up. You might feel it's worth the risk or the fun to just pop out into the verse on a solo 890 jump, but just consider this as your heads up that those days are rapidly fading and you might need to figure something else out. Again, just have a plan for what you want to use this ship for and how you'll use it. And the final point is this FOMO thing that CIG ferments. This is honestly one of those things I'm least enthused about with CIG's funding model. I'm fine with them having only 1 or 2 sales a year, okay, maybe 3, but having ships that are in artificially limited numbers that a person won't have access to for probably a full year, and with the guarantee that the price of ships will probably go up, especially if it's a concept, yeah, that pretty much guarantees that the bulk of the people that are snapping them up are resellers using bots to resell them on the black market. CIG has tried to take some actions to hold this down a little, but there's really not a way that can't be gotten around by a clever black marketer. This is less on you and more on CIG. Well, a lot more. CIG should really just make the ships available during the sale. Full stop. Sure, you can limit it to particular days to get some of that FOMO going, but forcing people who want a specific ship to go to the black market to get one for double, triple, or more is stupid. There, I said it. And gang, that's about all I got for this one. I'll be out for a week gathering up the newest member of my family for my sister, and hopefully by the time I get back, we'll be staring down 4.0. Maybe the Guardian and the Misfortune? Maybe? And then I'll be focused on rolling out Pariah for y'all. Just something a little different, a little more story and gameplay driven than my typical content. Love y'all, be good to each other, and have a good holiday. Catch me next time.